In the shadowed corridors of Renaissance Florence, where ambition clashed like swords in the night, a young scholar named Lorenzo wandered the streets, his mind a whirlwind of unfulfilled desires. He had read the ancient texts, pored over the strategies of kings and conquerors, but his life remained a chase, a relentless pursuit of power, love, and respect that slipped through his fingers like sand. Lorenzo chased alliances in the courts, chased affections from distant lovers, chased fortunes that mocked him from afar. Each failure etched deeper lines of weakness into his soul, making him vulnerable to the whispers of rivals who saw him as prey. One twilight evening, as the Arno River murmured secrets to the bridges above, Lorenzo stumbled upon an old manuscript hidden in the dusty archives of a forgotten library. It was not the work of a poet or a philosopher, but a treatise penned by Niccolò Machiavelli himself, unearthed from the annals of time. The pages spoke not just of princes and states, but of the inner fortress of a man, the art of crafting an irresistible presence that draws the world to you, rather than begging it to notice. Stop chasing, the words seemed to echo in Lorenzo's mind, start attracting. And, woven into the margins was a cryptic axiom: the man who destroys his weak self can never be destroyed by others. Lorenzo's hands trembled as he turned the yellowed pages. This was no mere political manual, it was a blueprint for personal dominion, a guide to transforming frailty into fortitude. He resolved to live by its principles, not as a scholar reciting verses, but as a man forging his destiny. Little did he know that this discovery would unravel his old self and rebuild him into something unbreakable. The manuscript began with the foundation of presence, the cessation of pursuit. Machiavelli's voice, preserved in ink, warned that chasing reveals desperation, a scent that predators devour. Lorenzo recalled his own pursuits, begging for favors from influential patrons, showering gifts upon a lady who viewed him as a mere amusement. Each act had diminished him, broadcasting his vulnerabilities like a flag of surrender. The guide urged a shift: cultivate an aura so compelling that others are pulled toward you, like moths to a flame. Lorenzo started small. He withdrew from the frantic social dances of Florence's elite gatherings. Instead of pleading for invitations, he immersed himself in solitary refinement. He studied the arts of rhetoric, not to argue, but to speak with the weight of mountains. His words, once scattered like leaves in the wind, became deliberate, laced with mystery. He dressed not in ostentatious silks that screamed for attention, but in subtle velvets that hinted at hidden depths. People began to notice the change, not because he demanded it, but because his silence drew questions, his poise invited curiosity. One day, at a modest tavern near the Duomo, Lorenzo sat alone, sipping wine with the composure of a statue. A group of merchants, known for their cutthroat dealings, eyed him from across the room. In the past, he would have approached them, offering flattery in hopes of a partnership. Now, he remained still, his gaze fixed on the flickering candle, exuding an air of self-sufficiency. To his surprise, one merchant approached, drawn by the enigma. "You sit as if the world revolves around you," the man said, half in jest. Lorenzo smiled faintly, replying with a single, probing question about the merchant's trade routes. The conversation unfolded naturally, the merchant revealing opportunities without prompting. By evening's end, an alliance was proposed, not chased, but attracted. This was the essence of Machiavelli's first lesson: presence is not loud, it is magnetic. The guide detailed how to build it through inner alignment. Abandon the chase for validation, it said, and invest in virtues that radiate outward. Lorenzo practiced daily rituals, rising at dawn to meditate on his goals, not as wishes, but as inevitabilities. He honed his body through fencing and writing, not for show, but to embody strength that others sensed instinctively. Weaknesses, like his former insecurity, were identified and starved. He no longer apologized for his opinions, instead, he stated them as facts, allowing silence to amplify their power. As weeks turned to months, Lorenzo's life transformed. Lovers who once ignored him now sent discreet messages, intrigued by his newfound detachment. Patrons sought his counsel, not because he pursued them, but because his presence promised value. The manuscript warned of pitfalls: false attraction born of arrogance could repel as quickly as it drew. True presence, it emphasized, stems from genuine self-mastery, not facade. Lorenzo tested this in a confrontation with a rival scholar, Giovanni, who had long belittled him in academic circles. Instead of chasing rebuttals, Lorenzo attended a debate and listened impassively. When his turn came, he dismantled Giovanni's arguments with calm precision, his words landing like well-aimed arrows. Giovanni faltered, the audience shifted allegiance not to a chaser, but to the attractor. Yet, the guide delved deeper, revealing that attraction requires destruction, the systematic elimination of the weak self. Machiavelli's words painted a vivid picture. The weak self is a traitor within, whispering doubts, urging compromises that erode your fortress. To destroy it, one must confront fears head-on, like a prince besieging a rebellious city. Lorenzo faced his own demons. His fear of solitude had driven endless chases. Now, he embraced isolation, using it to forge resilience. He burned old letters of unrequited pleas, symbolizing the death of dependency. In the heart of Florence's bustling markets, Lorenzo applied this. A shady dealer offered him a quick fortune through deceitful means, a chase for easy gold. The weak self tempted him, but he refused, walking away with head held high. Word spread of his integrity, attracting honest partners who valued such rarity. The manuscript illustrated this with historical anecdotes. Cesare Borgia, who attracted loyalty by destroying his own hesitations, becoming a force none dared challenge. Lorenzo mirrored this, auditing his habits, discarding procrastination, envy, and self-pity. Each destruction built a stronger core, making him impervious to external assaults. As Lorenzo's presence grew, so did envy. Rivals plotted, spreading rumors to undermine him. But the man who had destroyed his weak self stood unmoved. When accusations flew in a public forum, he responded not with frantic defenses, but with evidence presented coolly, his composure disarming the attackers. They retreated, baffled by his indestructibility. The guide affirmed, "Others can only destroy what you allow to remain fragile." Lorenzo's journey extended beyond personal gain. He began mentoring others subtly, not by chasing disciples, but by living as an example. Young artists and thinkers gravitated to him, forming a circle of influence that rivaled the Medici's salons. In quiet evenings by the fire, he shared fragments of the manuscript's wisdom, watching as they too stopped chasing and started attracting. One protégé, a painter named Marco, had chased commissions fruitlessly. Under Lorenzo's influence, Marco focused on mastering his craft in seclusion. Soon, patrons sought him out, his works fetching fortunes. The manuscript's teachings on attraction wove through every facet of life. In matters of the heart, it advised against pursuit's desperation. Lorenzo met Isabella, a noblewoman of sharp wit, at a masquerade. In the past, he would have chased her with poems and gifts. Now, he engaged her in conversation that revealed his depths without overt effort. She was drawn, initiating further meetings. Their bond formed not from chase, but mutual pull, a testament to irresistible presence. Challenges arose, testing the destruction of weakness. A financial setback from a failed venture threatened to revive old insecurities. The weak self whispered retreat, but Lorenzo confronted it, analyzing errors coldly and pivoting with resolve. He attracted investors by presenting a vision unmarred by doubt, turning loss into triumph. Machiavelli's guide stressed vigilance: the weak self regenerates if not continually slain. Daily reflections became Lorenzo's weapon, ensuring no vulnerability lingered. As seasons cycled, Lorenzo's presence became legendary in Florence. He walked the streets not as a chaser of glory, but as its embodiment. Diplomats from distant lands sought audiences, attracted by tales of his wisdom. Even the Pope's emissaries noted his influence, offering positions he accepted on his terms. The axiom rang true: destroyed weaknesses rendered him untouchable. When a conspiracy brewed against him, jealous nobles plotting exile, he learned of it through attracted allies, dismantling it before it struck. The manuscript's deeper layers revealed attraction's subtlety and power dynamics. It cautioned against overt displays, advocating for the velvet glove over the iron fist. Lorenzo applied this in negotiations with the city's guilds. Instead of chasing agreements, he positioned himself as indispensable, offering insights that drew concessions naturally. Success bred more success, his network expanding like roots beneath soil. Yet, true mastery demanded balance. The guide warned that unchecked attraction could isolate, turning presence into aloofness. Lorenzo countered this by fostering genuine connections, not as tools, but as extensions of his strength. He hosted gatherings where ideas flowed freely, attracting minds that enriched his own. In these moments, he reflected on his transformation from a desperate scholar to a man of gravity. One fateful night, under a canopy of stars, Lorenzo revisited the library where it began. The manuscript lay open, its pages a mirror to his soul. He had stopped chasing shadows, attracting substance instead. The weak self, once a tyrant, was ashes. And, in its place stood a man no force could destroy. But, the journey was not complete. The manuscript hinted at greater applications, extending personal presence to societal change. Lorenzo envisioned a Florence where men and women embodied these principles, a city of attractors reshaping Italy. He began writing his own addendums, blending Machiavelli's wisdom with his experiences, ensuring the guide lived on. In the quiet hours, as dawn painted the horizon, Lorenzo pondered the axiom's profundity. Destruction of weakness was not violence against self, but liberation. It freed one to attract without fear, to presence without pretense. His life, once a chase, was now a magnetic force, drawing the world into orbit. Part 2 unfolded seamlessly from the first, as Lorenzo's influence rippled beyond personal spheres into the turbulent waters of Florentine politics. The city was a cauldron of intrigue, with families like the Medici wielding power through alliances chased and bought. Lorenzo, armed with Machiavelli's guide, chose a different path. He stopped pursuing positions in the Signoria, the governing council, and, instead cultivated an aura of indispensability. Whispers of this council reached the ears of key figures, not through his efforts, but through the natural pull of his reputation. A crisis emerged when rival factions threatened civil unrest over trade disputes with Venice. In the past, Lorenzo would have chased mediation roles, offering services eagerly. Now, he remained in his study, analyzing maps and treaties with quiet intensity. Word of his expertise spread, and, soon, envoys arrived at his door, attracted by the promise of unbiased insight. He received them with measured hospitality, sharing knowledge that resolved tensions without claiming credit. The factions, drawn to his neutrality, implemented his suggestions, averting conflict. Gratitude followed, elevating his status without a single chase. This event illuminated Machiavelli's teaching on strategic withdrawal. By not chasing visibility, one attracts authority. The guide elaborated with examples from history how Scipio Africanus attracted Roman loyalty by destroying his impulsive self, becoming a beacon of discipline. Lorenzo mirrored this, identifying his own impulsiveness as a lingering weakness. He destroyed it through deliberate pauses, weighing actions against long-term attraction. In social encounters, he no longer reacted to provocations, instead, his silence compelled apologies from offenders. As his presence solidified, Lorenzo faced a personal trial, betrayal by a close associate, Tommaso, who chased personal gain by leaking confidences. The weak self urged revenge, a chase for justice. But, the guide advised attraction through elevation, rise above, letting the betrayer's actions expose their frailty. Lorenzo responded by publicly praising Tommaso's past contributions while subtly withdrawing support. Tommaso, isolated by his own greed, sought reconciliation, attracted back by Lorenzo's unassailable poise. Forgiveness was granted on terms that strengthened loyalty, turning a wound into armor. The manuscript delved into the psychology of attraction, explaining how humans are drawn to certainty. Lorenzo embodied this by destroying doubt. He practiced affirmations rooted in reality, not delusion, reviewing achievements daily to reinforce self-belief. In romantic pursuits, this manifested profoundly. Isabella, now his companion, confessed that his initial detachment had intrigued her, a stark contrast to suitors who chased relentlessly. Their relationship deepened, built on mutual respect rather than pursuit's imbalance. Expanding his circle, Lorenzo attracted intellectuals from across Europe. A German philosopher, Heinrich, arrived uninvited, drawn by tales of Lorenzo's library. Instead of chasing discourse, Lorenzo listened, offering insights that sparked collaboration. Together, they explored Machiavelli's principles, applying them to emerging sciences. Heinrich's weak self-arrogance crumbled under Lorenzo's influence, as he learned to attract knowledge through humility. Challenges mounted as Lorenzo's fame grew. A powerful banker, envious of his pull, attempted sabotage by spreading financial rumors. The attack aimed at Lorenzo's reputation, but the man who had destroyed his weak self remained serene. He countered not by chasing defenses, but by transparently sharing ledgers with trusted allies, who in turn vouched for him. The banker, overextended in his chase, faltered, while Lorenzo's network expanded, attracting more capital. The guide emphasized adaptability. Presence must evolve with circumstances. During a plague outbreak, Lorenzo stopped chasing safety in isolation and, instead, organized aid discreetly. His actions drew volunteers, forming a coalition that mitigated suffering. Recognition followed, not sought but earned, solidifying his indestructibility. In quieter moments, Lorenzo reflected on the axiom's layers. Destroying the weak self meant continual reinvention, shedding outdated habits like old skin. He audited relationships, ending those that drained without chase, attracting healthier bonds. With Isabella, this meant vulnerability without weakness, sharing fears conquered, which deepened their attraction. As part 2 wove into the fabric of his existence, Lorenzo's story became a living testament. He no longer chased dreams, they converged upon him. The manuscript's wisdom, once hidden, now illuminated paths for others, proving that true power lies in attraction born of inner destruction. The culmination in Part 3 brought Lorenzo to the pinnacle of Machiavelli's vision, a presence so irresistible that it reshaped destinies. Florence teetered on the brink of war with Milan, alliances fracturing like glass. Leaders chased treaties desperately, but Lorenzo, having mastered attraction, positioned himself as the unseen fulcrum. He hosted informal gatherings, not as a chaser of influence, but as a hub where ideas converged. Ambassadors attended, drawn by his reputation for foresight. In these sessions, Lorenzo destroyed any remnant of ego, speaking truths that others chased in vain. His proposals for peace, grounded in mutual benefit, attracted endorsements. The weak self of nations, greed and fear, was exposed, and, through his presence, compromises emerged. War was averted, not by his pursuit, but by the gravitational force of his counsel. Machiavelli's guide praised such mastery: the prince who attracts peace commands more than the warrior who chases victory. Personal evolution continued. Lorenzo faced mortality's shadow when illness struck, a test of his indestructibility. The weak self whispered despair, urging a chase for cures. Instead, he attracted healers through calm resolve, focusing on legacy. Recovery came, strengthened by destroyed frailties. He penned a comprehensive extension of the manuscript, blending stories of his journey with timeless principles, ensuring its transmission. Isabella bore witness to this final transformation. Their union, once attraction's spark, became a partnership of equals. They traveled to Rome, where Lorenzo's presence drew papal audiences without request. Discussions on reform influenced policies, his words echoing in halls of power. Rivals, sensing his unassailability, attempted one last assault, a forged document implicating him in treason. The chase for his downfall failed, allies, attracted loyally, debunked it swiftly. The perpetrators, exposed, fled, while Lorenzo's stature soared. In the twilight of his years, Lorenzo stood atop the hills overlooking Florence, the city a canvas of his influence. He had stopped chasing, started attracting, and destroyed the weak self utterly. The axiom proved eternal: such a man could never be destroyed by others. His life, a story etched in actions, inspired generations, a guide living beyond pages. Through trials and triumphs, the principles endured. Presence, forged in destruction, became the ultimate force, irresistible, unbreakable. And, in every soul that embraced it, the chase ended, attraction began. Word count, 8012, 13.1 sexpert.